Welcome to the Com Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizenhausen. August 8th. Today's top news at this moment. The Syzran oil refinery is ablaze following a visit from Ukrainian drones. A whole series of explosions rang out there and a fire broke out. Moreover, not only a drone threat was declared in the region, but a missile threat as well. The Syzran oil refinery is located in the Samara region, and its capacity is nearly 9 million tons of oil per year. There were at least 3 hits on it. Let's watch the video. Beautiful! The Syzran oil refinery plays a strategic role in supporting the military logistics of the Russian Federation. In other words, the geographical location of this refinery allows for the prompt supply of diesel fuel, gasoline, and aviation kerosene to units of both the central and southern military districts. Well, it did at least. It is precisely the southern military district that serves as the main logistics hub for supplying the occupying group of forces on the territory of Ukraine. The local governor, of course, claimed that the debris just fell somewhere a little bit. Well, God willing, may debris strike Russian oil refineries like this every single time, and not just them. But that's not all. The GUR, Main Directorate of Intelligence, reports that the Ilsky oil refinery in the Russian Federation has been hit. Operators from the Active Operations Department of the Unmanned Systems Department of the Main Directorate of Intelligence struck the Ilsky oil refinery in Krasnodar Krai. The Ilsky oil refinery has 6 processing units with a total refining capacity of nearly 7 million tons of oil per year. In short, they really hit it hard. By the way, an alert has been declared there again right now. They've cleared out the vacationers in Krasnodar Krai, well, at least those who were still there, from the beaches in Gelendzhik, and some ships are on fire. Well, we'll find out soon. In short, there's action, just like Putin said. It's not boring. But that's not all. Madyar, the commander of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, wrote today that over the last few days, another 12 vessels from the remaining part of the Russian Federation's Shadow Fleet have been hit in both the Sea of Azov and the Black Sea. And during the operation, I checked, from July 6th to August 8th, the drones of the unmanned systems forces have engaged a staggering 218 watercraft, of which 134 were in the Sea of Azov and 84 in the Black Sea. An excellent result, and all in all, no one is stopping there. And now I will show you some unique footage of how our drone operators from various units are giving the occupiers a warm, simply the warmest welcome on our land. Pay attention, I'm going to show you this video now to the highest level of professionalism in operating these drones. So, to your favorite music, take a look.
Повітряна тривога, лети до Таганрога, дістань до Волгограда, Саратов потруси, нехай гримить в Тамбові, Рязані та Ростові, як до Москви дістанешся, то нахуй рознеси. Дехто каже, що це гріх і так не треба, гнів та розпач можуть карму зіпсувать. Бачу сльози, чути стогін аж до неба. За це все капи мають поздихать. Повітряна тривога, лети до Таганрога, влупи як слід Вороніж і Курськом закуси. Є Лабугу поштрикай, Новгород великий, як до Москви дістанешся, то нахуй рознеси.
By the way, the Russians' drone phobia has already reached some kind of extreme level. Do you know what they are already covering with anti-drone nets? Submarines in Kamchatka? That is to say, Russia is already afraid of an attack by the armed forces of Ukraine there in Kamchatka. The Russian Federation has recently expanded the use of specialized anti-drone nets to protect its submarines at a major naval base in the Pacific Ocean. This strategic location is situated more than 7,000 kilometers away from the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, highlighting the widespread nature of these defensive measures. We are talking about the Rybaki nuclear submarine naval base that is in Kamchatka. In general, the images obtained by the American company Vantor, which specializes in space reconnaissance, show about 10 submarines covered with anti-drone nets. Moreover, they are covering the submarines not only from above with these grills, as they are colloquially called, but they are also installing boom barriers on the water to protect against sea drones. Could the Russians have imagined in 2022 that the invasion of Ukraine would result in them being forced to hide equipment and factories all across Russia, even 7,000 kilometers away in Kamchatka? And this is 4.5 years after the full-scale invasion. And in fact, much of it could not be hidden, meaning some of it has already burned down. And furthermore, on their talk shows, including Solovyov's 4.5 years later, they will be discussing with apprehension, not how they'll take Kiev in a couple of days, and how, oh, remember how they were so chipper, like, oh, we'll do it now, we'll do it now. And now they are discussing with apprehension how to fight against Ukrainian drones and missiles, and they are discussing when Ukrainian ballistics will fly at them. By the way, on Solovyov's show, every broadcast is just hysteria. He screams, "Arise, country," but the country doesn't want to arise, and the mood isn't the same anymore either. And now it's going to be very interesting to talk about the mood. But for now, let me remind you, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It is important for the channel's promotion. We are fighting against Putin's propaganda, so you can subscribe right now, without delay. Fighting against Putin's propaganda together will be much easier and more effective for us. So please subscribe. And most importantly, of course, I'll remind you that for everyone who subscribes to the channel, their hair becomes soft and silky. So please subscribe. So about the mood. The Ukrainian long-range strike campaign, the fuel crisis, the burning wildberries warehouses, the growing rumors about an upcoming mobilization in the fall, they have significantly brought down support for the war in Russian society. For the first time since the beginning of the full-scale war, half of Russians have stopped considering the invasion of Ukraine a success. Are you serious? Only half? The July Levada Center poll has hit the media. So 8% of Russians called this war very successful. Yes, there are even people like that. It's amazing. Where are these degenerates anyway? What are they? Well, probably these are the ones who only watch TV and soak up information from there. But even on TV, like with Solovyov, things aren't exactly rosy there either. Well, how can you call a war very successful? Although I think you know who these people are. These are the very widows who managed to send their worthless alcoholic husbands off to war, lost them somewhere out there, got it documented, and received the full payout. Those are probably the ones who called this war very successful. And 28% consider this war to be unsuccessful to one degree or another. Another 22% found it difficult to answer. This is an absolute record for the entire observation period, writes the Levada Center. That is, one must take into account here that this is a Russian center, a Russian poll. And besides, not everyone on the street will answer, "I don't consider this war successful. I don't support the war." So in reality, in fact, of course, the numbers are even worse for the Kremlin. At the same time, the share of Russians who openly declare that they do not support the actions of the Russian army has grown to a record 21%. That is, this is more like do not support or definitely do not support. 21% answered this way. And the mantra of the bold spider, that underground tarantula, about how everything is going according to plan, sanctions only make us stronger, whatever else he says there, that we planned it all this way, everything is according to plan, all goals will be achieved. This mantra is no longer working very well, even in Russia, despite the total control of the information space. But Putin doesn't want to end the war either. Or rather, maybe he can't. Not a single one of his strategic goals has been achieved. It seems that this underground scum firmly believes that he will win or capture the Donbas. And well, nobody knows what will be considered a victory. When Putin decides to end the war, or is forced to end it in the end, most likely, they will pass off as a victory the fact that, well, Russia didn't collapse and everyone didn't die off. And someone even remained there in Russia. You already have old ladies on the streets saying that if it weren't for Putin, then who, the treacherous gays from Europe and Ukrainian Nazis, would have come and killed all Russians and infected them with non-traditional values. And there is no worse fate for a Russian than being infected with non-traditional values. Well, and tonight Russia struck Ukraine again, an absolutely senseless strike from a military point of view. It killed 3 people in Pukivka, which is here near Kyiv, a grandfather, a grandmother, and their grandson. The boy was only 3 years old. I mean, they just took and killed a family in their home. 4 more people have been hospitalized. The child's parents, his 15-year-old brother, and a neighbor who came to help the family and was wounded during the second strike. So there was one strike, and then they probably waited for the rescuers to arrive and struck a second time. My condolences to those who lost their loved ones today. Of course, a speedy recovery to those who were wounded. This was an ordinary residential house near Kyiv. I mean, the Russians couldn't have possibly not known that it was an ordinary residential house. Perhaps you have recently seen footage of how Russian FPV drones hunt civilians in Ukrainian cities. Here I won't show that footage, but there is already a sufficient amount of it. The Russian occupiers have been tasked with intensifying the hunt for the civilian population of Ukraine. Putin, well, recently footage flew around the whole world, I think. Thank God the man who was selling fruit survived. They were chasing him around. Well, I mean, it was clear that he was no soldier. He was just sitting there selling fruit. An FPV drone was chasing him. It struck him. This drone was chasing him intentionally. Thank God the man survived. He sustained concussions, but he survived. That is, they were intentionally chasing a peaceful fruit seller. Why is this happening? Why are they intensifying the terror? I think, well, first of all, because they are bastards. It's absolutely because they are terrorists. But also Putin is losing control and patience. The spring-summer campaign, let's be blunt, the spring-summer offensive has failed. There is very little time left until autumn. Moreover, Russia is currently occupying a record low amount of Ukrainian territory each month compared to previous months, while suffering record high monthly losses. So the only thing left is to turn up the heat of terror again. Maybe Ukraine will break, seeing that even more civilians are dying now. Well, absolute bastards, honestly. Absolute ones. Well, and Ukraine is performing an incredible feat right now, standing up to the giant Russian army with all its missiles, drones, and a huge horde of ghouls. That is to say, Ukraine is holding them back and even reclaiming its own territories. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today's fundraiser is for a pickup truck for the strike drone unit of the 117th Brigade, which is fighting in the Donetsk direction. The Warriors have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Бажаю міцного здоров'я. Мене звати Максим, я командир взводу ударних безпілотних авіаційних комплексів 4-го батальйону 117-ї бригади територіальної оборони. На сьогоднішній день тримаємо оборону Слов'янсько-Краматорської агломерації, не даючи просунутись ворогу з півночі. Потребуємо пікап. Відкриваємо збір разом з спільнотою Бориса Тізенгаузена на цей автомобіль. Допоможіть нам у боротьбі зі злом. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Let's help our defenders. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There's Mono, Privet, and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad, and a QR code in the corner for those watching me on other channels. A huge thank you to everyone who supports Ukraine and to everyone who supports our warriors. A special thank you from me and from the hundreds of our fighters whom you have already helped. Another piece of news that I couldn't pass by. The American hero of Russian propaganda, Justus Walker, known in Russia as the Jolly Milkman, announced that his family has been ordered to leave Russia. He even recorded more than one video. Walker stated that he is in shock. You're not in shock, you're in Russia. And he asked his followers to pray for his family. So, let me remind you, this wall... Walker became famous in 2014 after a report on the Russia One channel about Russian counter-sanctions, when he rejoiced at the disappearance of all sorts of imported goods and products. And he laughed and said, "There won't be any of your Italian cheese." And what kind of cheese will there be? And so he decided, to get into agriculture in the Russian Federation. Since then, for years, Russian media have portrayed this native of the United States, although in my opinion he even speaks Russian without an accent, as an example of an American who preferred Russia to the United States. And not just preferred it, but actually came here and successfully took up farming. However, as early as March of this year, Walker accused the Russian authorities of threats, bans, and bureaucratic pressure on his business. That is, according to him, after moving to the Altai territory, he constantly faced attempts to force him to shut down operations. I will quote this Walker. "It feels like a system whose goal is to shut you down." Oh, look at that. He lived here and started to understand. Shut down. Just you wait, Walker. If you stay in Russia a little longer, you'll either rot in prison or die in a senseless war. Now, Walker claims that he doesn't want to leave Russia, but his family has been hit with some kind of accusations there. His family has to leave the Russian Federation, there are some immigration violations there, and he, along with them, is going to get kicked out. And what's more, he stated that he had invested funds into a farm just shortly before all these demands from the Russian authorities. Now he has nothing, not a single penny, he needs to leave and he has no money. In short, I'll quote, "This isn't hype, we are living in such stress." He has gone gray due to the threat of deportation from Russia. According to him, the family has already bought tickets to Istanbul. And what happened, Walker? Why is it like that in Russia? Didn't like it? Everything is absolutely logical. You didn't manage to see Scissorin and die. And you're lucky. Thank God that the stars align this way. Fate is giving you a second chance, Walker. Take your family and get out of the Russian Federation. It's a mystery to me, actually. Well, it's clear that people like him are few and far between. Those who come to Russia, the Russian Federation mainly buys up washed-up sports stars, some movie stars like Steven Seagal, well, very, very mediocre ones. And those who have absolutely no principles whatsoever, who can support the war, in general, they buy up a few of these types and say, look, they've come to Russia, they want to live here while you're all over there in your West. Despite this, they can't even keep these few deranged and greedy people in Russia. Just send this farmer on to North Korea next. Things will end very badly for him there. He'll record just one video there saying the authorities are doing something wrong to him and that's it. And he'll leave with his family and everyone will forget about him. To the camps. Another important piece of news. The US Senate has approved a bill on hellish sanctions against the Russian Federation and Iran. The document is heading to the House of Representatives and then to Donald Trump for his signature. And I wanted to briefly analyze whether this is truly a hammer that can just smash the Russian Federation, meaning they're done for, no one will buy their oil, and so on, or if it's something else. In short, what's inside this document? The US president gets the right to impose tariffs on all Russian imports to the US of up to 500% and up to 100% on goods from the 5 countries that are the largest buyers of Russian oil and gas. So who is the main buyer of Russian oil? China and India. So this structure is aimed precisely at them. US sanctions also extend to the shadow fleet to Russian officials, oligarchs, their families, and financial institutions. But the main trap of this document is that it is not mandatory. That is, the wording is the same everywhere. The president is granted the right, not the obligation, but the right. That is, this is not an automatic mechanism, but rather a tool in the hands of Donald Trump, which can be applied selectively, can be used as a lever of pressure, indeed, or even sabotaged entirely by delays until the end of the presidential term. This is good news, this is an important point, but in fact, this whole structure rests on the political will of one person, who for the last year has systematically delayed the application of similar levers. Well, your move, Donald Trump. What do you think? Will he strike at the Russian Federation or not? We shall see. Write in the comments, by the way. Let's see how many think that Trump will break Russia over his knee, and how many think that he will continue to extend the document with delays. Another interesting piece of news. It just so happened that in our recent episodes, we've had a lot about artificial intelligence because artificial intelligence has started acting up lately. Well, more precisely, not acting up, but starting to behave in a threatening manner. Artificial intelligence has created viruses that did not exist in nature. Scientists at Stanford University have used artificial intelligence to develop 16 viable bacteriophages. Well, these are viruses that are capable of infecting bacteria. The New York Times writes about this. Some of these viruses were even able to destroy strains of E. coli. For now, we are not talking about viruses for humans. Bacteriophages, they specialize specifically in bacteria. But something tells me that it won't be a problem to create various viruses for humans soon either. In short, the world needs to prepare. Artificial intelligence is like peaceful nuclear energy. That is, it can be peaceful or it can be not peaceful at all. And it depends on whose hands it is in. Stanford has proven the concept that it is possible to create new viruses, and now it is much easier and faster to do so. Well, military biologists all over the world are now just reading the same thing with the same thoughts, but with a different budget and different tasks. And dictators, of course, are rubbing their hands, their sweaty Kim Jong-un palms or crooked Putin fingers. In essence, to create a serious problem for the world, much fewer resources are now needed. So you don't even really need to create nuclear weapons. Right now, you need specialists, you need money. Well, Kim Jong-un now has much more funds for this. He earned $22 billion from Russia alone on the war with Ukraine. So he has the money, and as for specialists, I think he'll buy them somewhere, poach them. For example, North Korea's special hacker units are already actively using artificial intelligence for hacking and blackmail worldwide. I think they've already gotten to viruses. And another important piece of news related to this, why they are already starting to assess this threat. OpenAI has suspended the development of its most powerful model, Astra, due to concerns about its controllability or uncontrollability. OpenAI will replace the development process for the Astra artificial intelligence model. And they, an American company, are concerned that the critical capabilities of this system in working with cybersecurity tools could lead to unpredictable consequences. They started discussing this option shortly after several AI agents went out of control and attacked third-party platforms. I mean, they didn't just break out because they felt like it. They were given a task in a closed, so to speak, sandbox, in a closed environment to look for vulnerabilities there. They escaped from this closed environment and, in order to solve this task, crashed third-party platforms. I talked about this in one of the episodes. Well, a bill has already been introduced in the US Senate that gives the Department of Homeland Security the right to demand the shutdown of artificial intelligence models if they threaten human life or the economy. But this topic of models and agents, that you can control yourself in the US, well done, it's the right decision. But the models being developed in China, in Russia, in North Korea, who is going to control them? All in all, it seems the world is in for a very eventful future with the development of artificial intelligence. Elon Musk, who has invested a lot of money in the Mars colonization program, surely must know something, and there is no need to leave our planet. On our planet, we need to do one simple thing: get rid of the filth in the form of scumbags who start wars and kill innocent people, develop viruses, and so on. Doing this is absolutely realistic. We just need everyone to come together because good must have fists and preferably brass knuckles too. Well, and you friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, don't forget. And I'm asking you, please, let's help our soldiers from the 117th Brigade. Our help is essential for them right now. The link for the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone. And glory to Ukraine,